Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we have a lot to talk about, including a large severe weather event that's about to take place tomorrow across much of the United States, bringing the risk of damaging winds, large hail, and even a few tornadoes. And we'll also be discussing the potential for a winter storm that might bring some blizzard-like conditions to parts of the Northeast. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast. And let's begin with what's happening across the United States today, including that large storm that has already begun to ramp up in the northern plains. That's where it's currently located, and this is actually set to develop more in the southern and central plains over the next 24 hours, and that'll bring the risk for severe weather as we go into tomorrow, and even tonight we're going to see a few severe storms. But the bigger concern will be tomorrow across much of the Ohio Valley, and then back into parts of the Mississippi Valley will be our concern for tomorrow for all modes of severe weather. The East Coast has some cloud covers, a little bit of moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico as well. Obviously, this area will be seeing a lot of rainfall as we go into Saturday and Sunday, so be ready for that. And then back over on the West Coast, pretty quiet over there. The southern plains also quiet for now, but there might be a couple of severe storms tonight, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Now, let's talk about what's upcoming over the next several days, because there will be a lot of things to talk about over the next 72 hours. Everything, for the most part, will be happening this weekend. So beginning with tonight, we have our low pressure system again centered back up in Minnesota. We also have some showers and storms that are going to develop along a cold frontal boundary that's going to extend all the way down into Texas tonight. Notice as we go overnight tonight, low pressure system starts to redevelop over the Midwest. We're going to have some showers and storms out in front of this across parts of the Ohio Valley and as well as the Mississippi Valley. And also there's going to be some snowfall back over in parts of Minnesota and as well as the Dakotas. But overall, it's not very heavy. It's not a winter storm by any means up there. But once we go into Saturday, that's when things are going to change really quickly, because we're going to see an intensifying storm back over just north of Michigan. We're going to see a cold front that's going to extend from Michigan all the way back down into Texas, and we are going to see severe storms fire up right along that cold frontal boundary. So there will be a threat of severe weather stretching from Ohio and back into Louisiana and Texas, and we'll be talking about more specific details on this, including the timing and the threats, in just a moment. Now, once we go closer to around Saturday evening, storms continue all across the Ohio Valley and then back into the Mississippi Valley. And then once we go into Sunday, you might think there's really not a whole lot of snow ongoing. If there's any, it's back up into Canada, right? Well, things are going to change a little bit as we go into Sunday. We are actually going to see on the back side of that cold front some snow as we go later into Sunday. Notice how that starts to filter in all the way from literally North Carolina back into parts of the Northeast, including New York. This will be the area to watch for as cold air advection ushers into much of the East Coast. We are going to start to see that transition from rain into a mixture and then eventually into snow as we go into late Sunday into Monday morning. But it's going to be a pretty quick moving system, so many areas will not really see that much snow, but there will be some areas that see upwards of 6 to 12 inches of snow, and I'll show you where those areas are here in just a moment. And then once we go into Tuesday into Wednesday of next week, things dry out. We have a high pressure system that will dominate most of the United States as we go into much of next week. By next Wednesday into Thursday, we will have to watch a storm that will probably develop in the southern and central plains. That would be our next threat, and we'll be talking about more on that after we get past this storm that is going to be pretty impactful in its own way. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next couple of days, and then we'll talk about the winter storm threat. Beginning with today, there's actually a marginal threat of severe weather stretching from southern Missouri back into parts of northeast Texas, much of Arkansas, and eastern Oklahoma. Main concern today will be damaging winds and isolated large hail. Then once we head into tomorrow, that is when things become a lot more concerning. We are talking about all modes of severe weather, including damaging winds, large hail, and as well as a few tornadoes will be possible. And I think the tornado threat will be maximized across parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. And I'll show you those exact areas here in just a second, but definitely a concern. And then once we go into Sunday, we'll have another threat of severe weather on the East Coast. For now, it's a marginal threat. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a small slight risk somewhere, maybe on the, the Carolinas, for example, or perhaps even in the Florida Panhandle. But overall, not really too concerning. It'll be mainly an isolated damaging wind threat on Sunday. Now for tonight, there will be a few severe storms, primarily stretching from like southeast Oklahoma, maybe on the Texas border, and then back up into southern Missouri. This will be, again, the main area to watch for. This is around 7, 8 o'clock tonight. Again, be mindful. Some isolated large hail, damaging winds will be a concern. These storms will move closer to Little Rock as we go closer to midnight, and then overnight, those storms will move off to the east. They will weaken out after midnight tonight. But overall, again, not too concerning, but definitely take the proper precautions just in case you do end up seeing one of those storms. Here's the tornado parameter for tomorrow, and I mentioned a few minutes ago that the greatest tornado threat, I think, will be across parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. So this is what we're looking at with the tornado parameter as we go to around 2 to 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. This is the area that has really the greatest concern. That'll be from about central Kentucky back into central and western parts of Tennessee, and then back into maybe a very far northern quadrant there of Mississippi and Alabama. And then once we go through the afternoon, look at the grays and a few yellows popping up there. That would again represent the highest tornado probabilities, which again, it's not a high threat by any means. It's about a low to medium threat for the tornado risk. So definitely have a tornado action plan in place. I do have a plan to be live tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. And here's the overall future radar, starting with Kentucky, southern Indiana, and Tennessee for tomorrow. So by 1 to 2 o'clock, storms will fire off, most likely in a line of storms. So a linear setup is what we're expecting, and we'll probably get mainly damaging winds out of this, and then maybe a couple embedded tornadoes to go along with that, and that'll stretch from Cincinnati back into Barlett. And as we go closer to 4 to 5 o'clock, notice we'll actually have a few hook echoes likely develop, and this is again on the HRR model. It gives a pretty good representation of where that tornado threat could be maximized, and that's where we'll have to watch that threat for tornadoes tomorrow. By 5 to 6 o'clock, storms moving through Nashville, going through Lafayette, and eventually as we go closer to 7 to 8 o'clock, the storms are moving off to the east toward Cookeville, Somerset, and eventually as we go closer to 10 o'clock, severe weather threat is diminishing. Damaging winds would be the main threat from there. And again, the plan to be live tomorrow would probably be somewhere between about 3 to about 7 o'clock. That's the estimated time right now. And as we go further down to the south into Mississippi and Alabama, storms will fire off around 2 to 3 o'clock. Moving off to the east, they'll be pretty scattered across this region, not nearly as widespread, semi-discreet at best. Once we go closer to 8 to 9 o'clock, storms are moving into Birmingham, back through areas like Huntsville, Alabama, and then once we go into the overnight hours, those storms will weaken, turn into more of a damaging wind threat from there. Here's the timing across the entire board. Again, the main concern I think will be across Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. We might see some isolated severe storms though mix in across southern Ohio and Indiana, and then also back into Georgia. That'll be more of an overnight threat. But overall, again, that's kind of what we're looking at. I don't think we're going to see anything too substantial when it comes to significant severe weather in other areas. I think the four main states again would be Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. All right, here's what we're looking at for the snowfall totals. I mentioned this a few minutes ago, the winter storm threat. Here's what we're looking at for snowfall totals. This is the estimate from the European model, and right now not looking at much if you're back down into the mountainous regions there of North Carolina across the Appalachian Mountains. The greatest snowfall totals south of Pennsylvania will likely be in northeast West Virginia, and that will be the area that we might see 3 to 6 inches of snow. And then back over into Pennsylvania, it'll really vary across the entire state, but you might get a coating upwards of maybe 4 to 5 inches in northeast Pennsylvania. Now back into the northeast, that's where we're looking at a much greater amount of snow. So across upstate New York, 6 to 8 inches of snow is likely in some areas. We might get a couple isolated spots near a foot, and then even back closer west of Albany, we'll be looking at around 6 to 9 inches of snow. And then back into northern New England, it'll vary. Again, higher elevations will definitely see more snow, but overall, we're still looking at a widespread 1 to 3 inches, with some areas, again, getting closer to a foot of snow in those areas. Back into the Midwest, not really looking at much. At best, you'll see maybe a coating to an inch. A few areas in the upper Michigan Peninsula, though, might get closer to 2 to 3 inches of snow, and this event is all said and done. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.